there, Morons. It's Victor, King of the Morons. Welcome back to another Japanese sentence breakdown. Today's sentence is watashi ga ikimashou. For those of you who are learning Japanese from the very bottom, meaning hiragana, please follow along with me. Repeat after me. Together, this shou, mashou, but mashou is fine. This is but when you this hiragana alone is but when you put it together, it becomes shou. It's shou, but you can't really hear the anymore. Mashou, kimashou, ikimashou, ga ikimashou. And maybe you recognize this kanji. Watashi. Watashi ga ikimashou. Watashi ga ikimashou. Watashi ga ikimashou. And for those of you who want to learn the kanji, let's break down the kanji. There are only two kanjis here, so pretty easy. Here we go. This is watashi or watashi. Watashi. And this is iku, but in the polite form of shall we. Right? That's all it is. Ikimashou. Watashi ga ikimashou. Literally, it means shall I go? Shall I go? But the nuance is, why don't I go instead of somebody else? And let me explain that in detail. Okay, first of all, let's get to some of the basics here. Let's go through the vocabulary again. When you see this kanji, it's possibly read in two different ways. If it's very, very, very polite, you would say watakushi. But the slightly less polite is watashi. Well, actually, watakushi is super polite, and the watashi is standard polite. Okay, so we have watakushi, or watashi, and that's just I. But remember, we don't usually use the subject of I or you in English. I mean, in Japanese, unless you really need to be clear. So usually it's understood that I am speaking to you. So you don't need to use I, and you don't need to use to you. You don't need to say I or you in Japanese. However, if you know the person's name, you can say the person's name. So if I'm talking to Susan, I would say Susan-san, or Tom-san, if I'm talking to Tom. Or even if I'm talking about myself, I might say Bikta. I wouldn't say san in that case because it's myself. But children do that all the time. And some people think it's a bit presumptuous or, arrogant to refer to yourself in the third person, like our dear president. But it's not. If you want to be very clear, you would say, they might say, if it's confusing, they might say, who are you talking about? I'm Bikta. Oh, me. Or you could say watashi. I mean, that's fine. Anyway, the ga here is a subject marker. And when the little point here, I don't want to get into this too much because it's tricky, but ga and wa will both act as topic or subject markers. However, ga is a little bit stronger and it kind of gives it more emphasis. So when you say ga, you're basically saying this instead of something else, or you're emphasizing the subject, like this. In this case, I shall go. So shall I go instead of I'll go. Watashi wa ikimasu. I'll go. But watashi ga ikimashou, which shall I go? And this is a little bit like a question. Even though there's no ka ending, a lot of you will learn that Japanese sentences, questions ending ka, like mashouka. Shouldn't say ikimashouka, but you don't need to. It's intonation. Intonation is basically the rule for any language. Intonation is the most important thing. Even if you use rude English or Japanese, if your intonation is nice and polite, no one's going to be offended. Now, here we get to the ikimashou word, which is the potential, I believe it's called volitional. Depending on what site you use, it'll say potential or volitional form. Not potential, I think volitional. Anyway, we'll look at that in a minute. But the dictionary form is iku, which means to go, iku. The mas form is ikimasu. And the shall we form, I call it the the shall form is ikimashou. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the I. Remember, again, you don't need to say I or you in Japanese. But just so you're acquainted with these, there are a few ways to say. There's boku, which is generally a man, usually a young man. I still use boku myself. There's ore, which is a slightly rougher version of I. There's a great scene in the movie Your Name. It's about a young Japanese girl and Japanese boy switching places. And when she switches into her body, she's confused as to how to refer to herself. So remember, she's a woman she's a girl in a boy's body. So she says, watashi, which is a girl, and they're like, what? And then she says, boku, and they're like, huh? Then she says, ore, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah. So, and of course, there's no way to translate that in English, so they just put the Japanese there for that. Okay, so ore is a bit rougher. Washi is an old man version of I, and then atashi is usually a girl's way to say herself, and to refer to herself. And notice it's a very similar sound to watashi, which is formal. And I want to show you something. If you type out atashi in hiragana, look what happens. It switches over to watashi. So that's another possible variant pronunciation of atashi, of that kanji. Anyway, so if a girl is speaking, you could actually write the kanji watashi and pronounce it atashi. And that's, I guess, feminine. Men would never say that, okay? Unless you're a woman trapped in a man's body, which is possible. Okay, another way, which is kind of interesting, is the word jibun. Jibun means yourself, as in, how are you doing? I'm fine. Yourself? How about you? But of course, in English, jibun would be myself, if I'm talking about myself. So it could be yourself or myself. It could be either. So I should say myself or yourself, just to be clear. I'll add that to the direction, into the comments below. Remember, everything that you see on the screen will also be in the description below. Okay, so according to Yukari on Maggie Sensei, it has a slight military nuance. I'm not very familiar with military conversation, so I've never noticed this, but also in Osaka, and I have heard this before, Japanese teachers have told us this, in Osaka it could mean you, but I've heard it both. So, the thing about Japan is there's people from all over Japan living everywhere. So you might meet someone from Osaka in Tokyo and they might use it that way. So it's, it's a case-by-case situation. Okay, anyway. Now, something that you should start getting used to is the fact that Japanese verbs conjugate. So what you'll want to do is you can actually buy a book. Like I have a book somewhere, not right at hand, but I have a book somewhere. Do I have it? Not here? No, not here. Right, not here. But what you can do is just go online and look up verb conjugation, Japanese verb conjugation, like this. Japanese verb conjugation, just like that, right? And it'll show you some examples. And there's a bunch of sites. So for example, the ultra handy Japanese verb conjugator. And you can just go in there and just type in the verb in English. Iku, here it is, okay? And it'll show you what verb group it belongs to. It'll show you the te form, the infinitive form, and then it'll show you a bunch of different forms. Now, I want to go down here to the polite ikimashou, which is volitional, see, which I mentioned before. The volitional form is ikimashou, and it'll show you in English here. So it's good to get used to. Most of these are pretty good. You might come across one that has a mistake, but most of these are pretty good. It doesn't really matter which one you pick, but it's good to start getting acquainted with the different forms. Anyway, ikimashou is the volitional shall we tense. Now that's the polite form. Notice it also says iko, and actually that's one you hear a lot here. So instead of saying ikimashouka or shall we go, you might hear ikouka, ikouka, ikouka. Like as you're getting ready to leave the house or go out to a party or something, it's like ikouka, let's go. Okay, let's go. Okay, shall we go? Literally, shall we go? And it's casual. A little more polite, ikimashouka, ikimashouka. And instead of saying, if you want to be a little more stronger, instead of saying ka at the end, just say iko. Mo iko yo. Yo is a stressor at the end. Mo iko yo. Mo and yo at the if you preface and end your sentence with mo and yo, like mo iko yo, it'd be a little bit stronger. Give it a punch. Mo ikimashou yo. Bit of a punch, see? But if it's a question, ikouka, ikimashouka, okay, or ikimashou. So get used to that. Anyway, that's basically your sentence for today. I hope that was helpful. I will leave a couple links in the description to some verb conjugating sites. Or, like I said, you can go ahead and go on Amazon.com and look for a little book that conjugates all the verbs. There are those collections for learners like ourselves. Anyway, that's all for today. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you thought you got something out of it. More videos coming soon. I've got some other videos that are not related to this series that I'm going to put up that I think are interesting and fun for me to make as well. So keep your eyes out for those. And as always, I do thank you for your support, if you know what I mean. Or whichever, they both help. Whatever. Okay. And if you have any recommendations or suggestions or requests, leave them in the comment section. And until next time.